Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Swami Army review of the India and South Africa Test series that has just been complete. Now, to our disappointment, India has gone down 1-0 in what really was a loss in just one session. That sort of changed the whole game and that changed the whole series, and we went down 1-0. But nevertheless, a lot of positives to come out of the series for the Indian cricket team, which is always good. We did go in there with a young side, and we showed that these young batsmen and bowlers are very capable of keeping it out, of fighting it out on the world stage and overseas as well. Obviously, we've seen them do well in India, but the big challenge was to do well overseas, and I think they've certainly surprised and pleased a lot of people. Now, joining us today to review the Test series, of course, we have our usual suspects on our show. Angadh from the Swami Army in Sydney. Angadh, welcome to you. We lost him.
I can't hear him.
Sorry. Thanks, Kartik. It's nice to be on again.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for putting yourself off mute there. And also we have Gaurav Joshi, the freelance reporter, also one of our Swami Army members as well. Gaurav, welcome to you.
Thanks, man. Always good to talk cricket.
Fantastic. Now, it's, as I said, great to have you guys on board as always. We'll kick it off straight away. As we saw, India went down 1-0 to South Africa. Probably, well, at least what you two expected anyway. I certainly backed us to win the series 2-0, but that's another argument for another day. Angadh, what did you think were the standout performances for the Indian cricket team? We saw a lot of youngsters in this side touring for the first time overseas. What was the standout performances?
Well, barring Shikhar Dhawan and Rohit Sharma, all the young batsmen really performed. They really stepped up. I was quite impressed to see the way Murali Vijay fought it out in the second test when things were a lot tougher than the first test. Just fell shy of that century he was after. And obviously Ajinkya Rahane just coming in, he was kind of almost like India's Brad Hodge for a stage, and he really took the opportunity with both hands. And once again, another batsman who failed to reach triple figures, but that you can't really blame him for that. It was a position he was put in with everyone around him dropping in the first and the second session of the fifth day of the second test. But you have to give credit to where it's due, and the young Indian batsman really stepped up. Obviously, Rohit Sharma didn't make as many runs as he'd want to, or Shikhar Dhawan, but it's good to see when you got one of your openers, your number 2, your number 3, your number 4, and your number 6 making runs. So I think it's good signs ahead, but there's still plenty of improvements needed.
Absolutely, and also Gaurav, to you, the bowling was a really great effort. I mean, no one expected us to even come close to bowling out South Africa. Well, I mean, we didn't get a chance to at least take 20 wickets, but they did bowl them out in a couple of the innings for less than 300, and then obviously in the most recent Test match 500. But still, nevertheless, a good bowling effort by the young bowlers, excluding Zaheer Khan from age, of course.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it was the way Ishan started. It seems to me that if once there is a little bit of movement in the pitch, and our bowlers tend to respond very well. It's only when I think we're over reliant on reverse swing, and that's when we tend to struggle, as we did in Durban. But in saying that, also Ravindra Jadeja, I think his primary role is to do a holding job, and he's proven that he can bowl well overseas. And as we've seen, overseas, when India would throw abroad, the primary role of the spinner seems to be the holding role, while our pacemen look to take wickets. So, especially on wickets which aren't turning as much. So, that's two positives there. Of course, I think India's still very limited in the bowling stocks. It just seems that, of course, Shami is very good, but it seems like if there's no zing in the wicket, I think we need to find like an alternative option.
Yeah, I think we saw that Jadeja actually, continued his form from the home series into the overseas tours in South Africa. He bowled a really good line and length and didn't really give much away, and got the rewards for taking 6 wickets in that second test. So there's definitely good signs there from a spinner's perspective. We saw Ashwin wasn't as effective in the first test, but Jadeja came in and did really well. The pitch may have helped him a little bit, but nevertheless, we still got to get the job done.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as I said, and then I think Shami was terrific. I mean, just the way how he hits the deck and moves the ball. I mean, he's probably slightly unlucky. I mean, Ishan probably got those 4 wickets, but it could easily have been Shami in that first match. So, and even in the second, if perhaps Dhoni would have taken the second new ball a lot earlier, Shami might have been able to make a breakthrough a lot earlier. So, plenty of positives there, I think, but there's still, I mean, concern. Especially when we play in wickets that don't have much assistance. Either we need to play Yadav, who bowls at over 140, or we need to find. Well, I mean, Ishan needs to get up to a pace that's around that 140, 145 mark.
Absolutely. And now, Angadh, we did mention in the preview that the standout performers to look out for would be, in the South African team would be the usual suspects. Your Steins and Morkels and Philanders and whatnot. And just to remind you that I did call De Villiers to be the standout performer and evidently the man of the series, putting it out there. But what did you think? Who was your sort of man of the series from a South African perspective, and who was the reason why that they won the series 1-0?
For the South African perspective, I reckon the reason they did win 1-0 was Staines' performance in the second test. I mean, India sort of nullified him in the first test, and it teetered out to a draw. Whereas he really got on top of the Indian batsmen in both innings in Durban, and he proved to be the difference. Like 340 odd that India made in the first innings seemed like a good total until you saw South Africa make 500. So it showed that the pitch wasn't doing all that much, but it was just the way that Steyn had exploited the conditions. So he was definitely their man, and it's no wonder he's at the top of now he's number 2, but he's still him and Philander are the best seamers going around in the world at the moment. It's no surprise that South Africa holds such a commanding lead in the Test Championship table. So definitely Steyn for mine, being a standout for South Africa.
Fantastic. Now, guys, I can't go forward without asking you about that first test. Gaurav, India started off very well. India were dominating for about 90% of the game. 4 out of the 5 days were on track to basically have a test win with this young side where no one expected us to even come close. What happened on that last day? I mean, we almost gave up. In fact, I think India did give up at one point for the victory, and they were just trying to save the game. South Africa had it in their hands and decided to just play for the draw as well. Your thoughts? Was it a loss for India, or was it a loss for South Africa, or who won out of that, or who lost out of that?
Well, I think both teams were content with the draw. I think it's more of a loss for South Africa, considering the stage that they were at. I was actually quite impressed with Dhoni's captaincy in that on that final day. I thought he, in Dhoni's words, terms, I think he over-attacked, which was good for India. Unfortunately, he just didn't get the rewards from the bowlers. But South Africa, I think they've still got fear of losing. I could see Australia. You look at Australia, and they probably end up going for those runs. And you still have Morkel, who can, yes, he was playing on one leg, but he could handle the bat. You still have Tahir to come. So surely, it's an opportunity that was basically blown away by South Africa. I think they're the ones to blame rather than India losing it, because I thought Dhoni captained quite well in that on that final day.
You're right, and Angadh, we saw that Dale Steyn hit a 6 off the last ball of the game. I mean, it's not, and even Philander coming off a half century in the first innings, it's not like they couldn't bat. What do you think they were thinking?
Yeah, look, I think Gaurav's right there. South Africa has a history of having a fear of failure. Like, if you read some of the ex-players' biographies and stuff, like Gibbs and stuff like that, they go into detail about how the dressing room for a lot of the time, I'm talking about the last couple of decades, have had that mentality, to be overcautious, and it showed again that first test. As Gaurav said, teams like Australia would have tried to chase it down, even if it meant they lost trying to chase it. But it was quite surprising going to that last session to see South Africa bat the way they did, in terms of playing out the draw, especially when Stain hit that 6 off the last ball. But I think India was lucky to get away with that, because Gaurav said Dhoni did attack quite well in that last day, but it almost felt like some of the bowlers just expected to get the 8 wickets on the 5th day pitch. That's what I took from it, and I felt that Dhoni missed a trick. Like he used Rohit Sharma quite well in Durban. I was surprised he didn't throw him the ball in the first test instead of Kohli, because Rohit Sharma, yes, he's a part-timer, but he has had wickets in the IPL in South Africa. So, and especially with Ashwin not being as potent as we would have liked in that first test, I think he missed a trick there. But who knows what would have happened.
Yeah, but perhaps if India played Jadeja in that first test match with the ball spinning away from majority of the right-hand batsman, we could have had a different result as well. So, but India were never going to take that chance for the first test match.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I guess that old cliche of you have to be prepared to lose to win comes into play, and that's we've seen it didn't really work for either of the teams. And with the match was a draw, and then obviously South Africa has gone on to win the series 1-0. Just as you said, just the one session that India batted poorly on day 5, that morning session where they lost 8 wickets. That was basically changed the game, changed the match, and ultimately changed the series. Now, guys, you spoke about the former South African players. One man who's now become a former South African Test cricketer is none other than the great Jacques Kallis. He's had an amazing career over 18 years, scored over 13,000 runs, taken over 250 wickets, I think just under 300 wickets, 200 catches as well. This man is 3 players morphed into the one. He's been an outstanding performer for South Africa for all that time. Your favourite special moment, Gaurav, of Kallis, that you've seen so much cricket over the years. What was your standout performance by Kallis in his 18-year career?
Well, just the phenomenal record that Kallis has. I mean, there's so many innings, but the one that probably stands out to seeing what Kallis is all about is India's last tour of South Africa, playing in Cape Town. Harbhajan had gone through their top order, and I think South Africa 5 for 100 odd, and he put him after he'd scored a century in the first innings. He denied Harbhajan or India or win, and just the way he battled it out, and he went on to scored 100 again in the second innings, and that just basically sums up Kallis, because he just loves to bat, and with the record he has, it's just amazing. That's probably why we sometimes find it hard to find such a distinctive innings of Kallis, because he's just got so many of them. And it's just, if it's not with the bat, it's with the ball. If India's had a Jacques Kallis, maybe we win that Joburg test, because he comes in and picks up those 2 wickets that our seamers can't. So there's just so many of them. I mean, but that innings for me, and his debut 100 against Australia at the MCG, definitely had to stand out for me.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, South Africa has a huge home series against Australia coming up, as we've seen Australia in great form, doing really well in the Ashes, up 4-0 with 1 test to go. Was it the right time for Kallis to go? Did you think that he probably should have waited till that Australian series was over before he called it quits and getting a home test match at Cape Town as well in that final test, or was this did he get it right? And what did you think also was your standout performance by Kallis?
Well, in an ideal world, that's how we would have ended. Playing one of South Africa's toughest rivals in the last little while. I think Australia is the only team to have beaten South Africa twice in the last decade at home. So in an ideal world, it would have been perfect. But the man himself said one day you just wake up and you know it's your time to go. So he did the unselfish thing. You know, he left on good terms. His team is strong, so they can deal without him. So at the end of the day, you know, champions like that can call it whenever they want, and he felt that was the right time, and you know, respect to him. And as Gaurav said, it's just too hard to pick a Kallis. I mean, 292 wickets, 45 centuries. Like, where do you begin? Like, he's often forgotten between us, you know, armchair selectors. Like when we're debating about the best number 3 of that era, whether it's Ponting or Dravid, we forget about Kallis. You know, he's done more than Ponting and Dravid with the bat, but also taken 292 wickets, which is obviously not an easy, you know, feat. You know, bowling first change a lot of the time, and fast bowling at that, and then coming in putting the bat straight on. So you know, cricket is going to miss him. Like, world cricket will miss him. I know he'll stick around. I think it seems like he wants to play that World Cup in 2015, but I'm not too sure about that. Still a while away. But yeah, Test cricket would definitely miss a man like Jacques Kallis. Like, I can't even think of anyone who in this current batch of cricketers around the world who comes anywhere near him in terms of all-round performances day in, day out for their country. And yeah, like, hats off to a great career.
Yeah, that record of Kallis will never be broken.
Definitely.
That's pretty accurate there, guys. Now, quick question for you both. It's probably wrong of me to ask this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Kallis or Sobers?
I think it's a bit hard to judge across eras. I mean, you know, it's a whole Tendulkar or Bradman thing. We can't give you a definite answer, can we? I mean, the scheduling these days, I mean, that Kallis has had to play up to is nothing like what the former players had to do. And he's proved, you know, 18-year longevity in across 3 formats of cricket. And let's not forget all the franchise 2020 as well that he plays. So I don't know, it's a bit hard to judge.
Yeah, especially because we haven't seen Sobers. Whatever we know about Sobers, we've read about it or seen clips of it on YouTube or so forth. But look, I mean, the great thing that one thing that Sobers stands out probably over Kallis is just his flamboyance. I think people genuinely, no disrespect to Jacques Kallis, but people actually went to watch Sobers bat. I'm not sure if we can say that about Kallis, you know, but he was probably more of a purist. But you know, remarkable records. Would Sobers have survived for so long in, you know, 3 formats? Who knows? Well, we don't know the answers. So it's quite hard to really give you a definite answer.
That's good. That's exactly the diplomatic answer I was expecting, guys. Fantastic. Now, moving on to the series going forward. Obviously, it's a shame that we won't have a 3rd Test match in this series. It's the end of the South African tour. The Indian team will go back home and rest for a bit before we head off to New Zealand, where we'll play 5 one-dayers and 2 tests again there. What are you expecting, guys, from the New Zealand tour? Obviously, we feel that it won't be as challenging as South Africa, but it will definitely be a challenge for the youngsters again. It'll be a new challenge. It'll be a different challenge, slightly different conditions. The weather will be a lot cooler over there in New Zealand. But what are you expecting, Angadh, from the New Zealand tour coming up?
Well, for starters, I think the one-day squad that they pick will be the closest we'll see to the full-strength World Cup squad, because of although India does only play 2 group games in New Zealand. I mean, conditions obviously are a little bit similar to Australia, not too much, but you know, it will be good to get that exposure to the young guys. You know, 12 months out from the World Cup. There is talk about dropping Yuvraj Singh for Chiteshwar Pujara, so it'll be interesting to see if that's the case, because he has been scoring his runs pretty quickly, so I don't see why he should be pigeonholed as a Test batsman. Even in domestic one-day cricket in India, he's scoring quite quickly, and it would be alright to see him where they play him, whether it be at 3 and move Kohli down to 4, or bat at 4 where Yuvraj generally bats at the moment. But in terms of New Zealand not being as big of a challenge as South Africa, they have been playing pretty good cricket at the moment, but I think the Indian selectors might try and go with a younger brigade of bowlers, maybe maybe not take Zaheer Khan. I'm not too sure, but that's just the feeling I get since he seemed it hard to back up after back-to-back tests with his age and fitness issues. So it'll be interesting to see what squad they pick, which should be very soon actually.
Definitely. And Gaurav, what are your thoughts on the New Zealand tour coming up? Angadh mentioned that Zaheer Khan may or may not be there. Obviously, it's still an inkling, but we'll have to wait and see once the one-day squad has been announced, and the test squad for that matter. Is it time for Zaheer to be moved on, or do we still require him in that setup for the youngsters?
Well, the bigger question for Indian selectors is how long they're going to persist with Ishant Sharma. I mean, he's averaging 46 with the ball overseas, and sometimes we say, okay, he doesn't get the right conditions to bowl in India, but when he has had the conditions, he's averaging 46 with the ball, with a strike rate of every 14 overs. I mean, that's bordering. It's ridiculous. I mean, how long are India going to persist with him? Going back to Zaheer, well, if he does play in New Zealand, is he going to be right for England, which is going to be a 5-test series, and is he really going to last through 5 test match? In all the indications from the 2 South African test matches, probably no. So is it worthwhile taking him? I mean, I think it's worthwhile giving somebody else a go. Maybe someone like a Ishwar Pandey, who's sort of a bloke who generally hits the pitch hard. Maybe it's time to give him a go. So, but New Zealand, again, I think our batsmen have proved themselves. Our next generation of stars have proved themselves. It's against the bowlers. Can we find the bowlers? Does Yadav get a go? He needs to have a decent go in the team. And, New Zealand conditions, yes, they're going to be cold. Does the ball really swing? It's mostly seam bowling. So, our bowlers might pick up 20 wickets over there. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Zaheer, and especially Ishan.
I just want to interrupt there. I also want to put a question mark over Ashwin, whether he's a man overseas to be in the first 11. I would honestly much rather see an Amit Mishra or a Pragyan Oja come in there. I've always been a bit skeptical about Ashwin in the longer format away from India, and I mean, although he's only played, I think, about 5 or 6 tests outside of India, he's only got 7 wickets, which it's not a very good stat to look at when he's got 90 plus wickets at home.
You're absolutely right. I think Dhoni looks at it in point of what the opposition batting is like. I think he played Jadeja mostly because majority of South African batsmen are right-handed. So I think Dhoni likes the concept of having a spinner who spins the ball away. If New Zealand in their batting lineup are probably going to be 4 and 3, so it's going to be interesting to see what he goes with. And Jadeja's had a very good test match, but let's face it, I mean, for a guy who scored 2 triple hundreds, he really threw his wicket away with the bat, didn't he? So that hasn't done his chances.
Yeah, exactly right. He's averaging about 15 with the bat when if we'll remember correctly, he was brought into the test side after a long hiatus as a batsman in that 4th test against England in Nagpur last year. So he really needs to prove his batting credentials a bit more, I reckon.
Yeah, so there's certainly a lot of questions to be answered in the coming weeks, especially ahead of that New Zealand tour. Now, speaking of the New Zealand tour, Swami will be lucky enough. We will be there in Auckland for that first test match. So if anybody is interested to join us, please contact us via Twitter and Facebook for flights and accommodation details. And obviously tickets as well. We will be heading down there. A few of us will be heading down there, which will certainly be exciting for the test match, the first test match against New Zealand in Auckland. But nevertheless, we will be covering the series from wherever we are around the world before and after the one-days and test matches as well. So, as I said, jump on the website swamiarmy.com and also jump on the Facebook page and the Twitter page for more information about that New Zealand tour. A lot of tours.
That Twitter handle is Swami SWAMIARMY. So just make sure it's spelled correctly.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, don't get the wrong spelling. It's definitely an I in Swami, not a Y. Um, but yeah, all the information will be on the website, Twitter handle, Twitter pages, and the Facebook page. So make sure you tune in and ask us for any questions. You ask us with any questions you may have about the New Zealand tours. So we've got a lot of overseas tours coming up: the New Zealand one, the England one, and then the Australian tour, followed by the World Cup defence. So it's a lot of interesting cricket coming up and exciting cricket coming up for this young brigade of Indian cricketers. Do stay tuned for our preview coming up of the New Zealand tour in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, thank you very much, Angadh and Gaurav, for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you both on.
Thanks,
And
guys.
we'll see you all in the new year. Make sure you all have a happy new year and all the best for whatever it is that you're going to be doing tonight, being the 31st. Make sure stay away from all the bad stuff. But we'll be back with you in a couple of weeks' time for the New Zealand tour. Until then.
Thanks, Kartik.
Thanks, Kartik. Nice talking to you, Gaurav.
You too. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.